Hire your first sales team, lessons from 200 plus sales hires, how to not get burned. What's up, guys? Welcome back. It's Drew, Sales by Tomorrow. In this video, you might think it's nearly impossible to tell a salesperson, BS artist candidate from a true A player without 10,000 hours of experience. But in this video, I'm going to reveal the 3 tells that you can apply even if you haven't interviewed 2,500 salespeople. In case you don't know me, my name is Drew Long. I helped scale Lending Club from 150 grand a month to over $6 million a month. Along the way, we hired 200 plus salespeople and grew the sales team from 50 people to over 150 people. And if you stick around this video, by the end, I'm also going to show you our secret onboarding system that actually shrank productive time on the phones to just 2 weeks. By the way, you can grab both of those in the link in the description if you ever get tired of my yammering. So let's go into the first and most dangerous myth that you probably will face as a business owner about hiring salespeople if you've never done it before. Here's the dangerous myth about hiring salespeople, guys. Most business owners think about hiring salespeople and they are going to think to themselves, I just need to find someone with experience who can hit the ground running. Now, that might be right in other areas of your business and other functional areas, but in sales, this is downright dangerous advice or attitude. Here's the problem. Experienced salespeople get their experience selling someone else's product, not yours. And that means it's usually not an exact match for your product. Go figure. So what are they going to do when you hire them? Well, they're going to ignore all your training and they're going to try to sell your product the way they sold the last product, because humans can't help themselves from repeating successful actions that got them rewarded in the past. No matter how good your training and your onboarding is, I promise you it won't be enough to rewire the brains of super experienced veterans who spent the last years greasing the groove in their brain and body of how to get money. It's now a physiological response of how to get money. I promise you, he has a flashing red light roadmap outlined in diamonds in his mind, and changing that is going to be nearly impossible. This belief is exactly why the majority of sales hires fail in the first 6 months. You may think hiring an experienced salesperson guarantees results, but I'm here to tell you that experience without the right foundation is actually more dangerous than just hiring someone green who's never sold anything before. Now, the only exception to this would be if you find someone who has a resume where they rose to the top of the leaderboard in the stack rank in every single different vertical they ever sold in, but those people are more rare than a Zoom meeting without audio problems at the beginning, and you probably are experiencing a liar if they claim that on their resume. Not to worry, I'm going to show you how to suss out the lies in their resume in this exact video. So here's my experience, done over 2,000 interviews and 200 plus hires. The problem isn't finding the right salespeople, it's finding the right people to hire. Emphasis people, not salespeople, and knowing how to spot them in 15 minutes or less. At Lending Club, at the extreme end of our scaling, we were hiring classes of 20 closers at a time. To select the 20 sellers, we had to do what we'd call interview blitz days, where we did 2 to 3 days of 8 hours of interviewing per day, and each interview would be 20 minutes. So that's 3 interviews to the hour, and call it 20 interviews a day or 60 interviews per blitz. To grow that one sales team was well over 1,000 interviews. And that's not the only place I've interviewed and grown sales teams, of course. We ended up hiring more than 200 sellers. We grew profits from 150K to 6 million, as I mentioned, largely on the backs of the right sellers who then referred their friends, which actually introduced me to the whole concept of salesperson lifetime value, but that is a topic for a different video. Since then, I've been teaching these same techniques to companies that allowed them to do things like grow from $0 in profit to $1 million in profit in under 18 months, and shrink salesperson ramp time from 6 months down to 2 weeks, and increase revenue per employee by 341%. These aren't lucky breaks, my friends. This is a systematic approach to hiring and developing sales talent that I've refined over 12 plus years and 10,000 hours listening to sales calls, and me personally running new hire trainings of 15 to 20 people at a time. Here's a screenshot of that and bringing them up to quota carrying productive capacity again and again and again. So let me tell you the story to illustrate the hire that almost killed my reputation as a sales leader early on. And this was early in my career. I was at a company. They were growing fast, as always. I was desperate to scale the team. The perfect polished candidate walked in. Great resume, great references, talked a big game, had all the fintech buzzwords. So I decided to hire him on the spot. Within 30 days, he'd burned through 200 of our best leads, 0 closes, not a single one. When I listened to his calls, I realized he was just pitching and pushing, and he was using a system he'd learned somewhere else. And he was just doing what had gotten him success in the last place. As I said, he was repeating successful actions. The problem was our product was different, our category was different, and our prospect was different. So it wasn't going to translate. And the worst part was he was poisoning our culture all the time. Other sales team members were starting to question our process, our leads were getting wasted, and our conversion rates were tanking. Of course, I had to let him go, but the damage was done. That one bad hire cost us approximately $150,000 in lost revenue and took 2 months to recover our team morale. That's a painful lesson, but that's how you learn. That's when I realized that most professional salespeople are best artists by nature, and if you don't know what to look for or look out for, they'll sell you in the interview process better than they'll ever sell your prospects. So let me tell you the flip side of that story. About 2.5 years later, I had the flip side experience. This was the dark horse candidate who became our number one salesperson. It went like this. It was a beautiful spring day. I was walking through our customer service department when I heard a woman working on an inbound call. Her voice made my ears perk up. I heard something different. I took a surreptitious peek at her name tag as I walked by to identify her. Later, quite by chance, we ran across each other in the kitchen. I introduced myself and then I popped the question. Ever considered sales? She hadn't. She revealed to me later she actually wanted to be a law enforcement officer. Go figure. But she was very money motivated. So I gave her the steps to apply for our department. Within 2 weeks, we'd hired her. And I'll tell you what, guys, she was not a natural salesperson, but what she was great at was no-nonsense communication. She wasn't afraid of anyone, and after she'd honed her communication skills in our customer service department, it was a cinch for me to teach her our sales process and our sales techniques that she overlaid over the top of very good customer service and people skills. With those traits, it's hard to lose. She was smart enough to stick to a proven process. She was fearless enough to ask tough questions and question BS, and she was a hard enough worker to do it over and over and over again on repeat, which really makes the difference. Sales is not complicated. It's those three components. This woman had all three in spades. She implemented the talk track, she delivered them in her own powerful and unique way, and she won a huge number of deals, including a $380,000 day that I believe still stands as a record to this day. With no sales background on her resume, I turned an average customer service rep into our number one salesperson whose records still stand unchallenged. I learned 3 things from that experience. Finding the right person is 80% of the battle. It's much more dangerous to hire experienced salesperson than to grow new ones. And finally, if you want top talent, you need to go recruit it. You don't want to wait for it to come to you. So now that I've shared a couple stories from my experience, let me give you the benefit of wisdom of my experience, which is the 15-minute tell system. So this is how to tell in the first 15 minutes of your interview, whether you're talking to a BS artist, a traditional salesperson who's just trying to sell you that they're great, or an actual A player. So even though you've heard this and you know all this, everything I've told you so far, you're probably still going to want to follow a system, right? You're going to proceed with resume screens, interviews, and the like. You probably don't have the experience to just walk around across the street and find someone who's going to be a great fit for your sales team like I was able to do. Here is what's different. So most people are going to look for experience and track record because we make the mistake cognitively of thinking that past performance predicts future success, which is not always the case. In fact, it's often not the case in complex sales. That's like hiring a chef because they can talk about food when what matters is, can they actually cook? Have you tasted their cooking? Now, most hiring advice focuses on resume screening and behavioral questions. My method is about real-time performance indicators that predict success. And most people make the mistake of hiring fast and firing slow. You want to reverse those. You want to hire slow, fire fast. And I'm about to teach you how in the first 15 minutes, you can spot bad hires so you minimize the time spent with them in the first place. And if one does slip through, you can minimize the damage. So after interviewing thousands of candidates and making every hiring mistake possible, I promise you I've made it, I developed the following system. And the reason this works is because true sales ability shows up in micro behaviors that most people will miss if you're not trained. So I'm about to train you. A players have fundamentally different responses to these questions than B players do. And I'll show you and teach you how to spot both. And honestly, once you know what to look for, it becomes obvious. So here's the 3-tell system, how to implement it. So number 1, the question flip test. So early in the interview, after some small talk, within the first 10 minutes, I want you to ask the following question. What questions do you have for me about this role so far? Very simple question. Here's what B players are going to ask. What's the commission structure? That's a money-focused question first. What's the quota? Worried about expectations. What benefits do you offer? That's an employee mindset. What does the career advancement opportunities and path look like? They're already thinking about escaping their role into a higher role with less responsibility. Or, worst case scenario, they have no questions for you at all. An A player will ask, yeah, I'm so glad you asked me that. What does your ideal customer look like? What's the biggest challenge your sales team faces right now? What separates top performers from average ones? Or what are your top people doing right now? What's the number one salesperson doing on your team that's different from everybody else? A players are natural salespeople, right? They can't help but qualify you as a prospect and qualify the opportunity, even though they're the ones being interviewed. They want to understand the problem that they'll be solving, partly to evaluate if it's the right challenge for them. Vetting people and opportunities comes naturally to them. They have standards. They have high standards for themselves, and they're vetting to make sure that you live up to those standards. This single test has saved me from a lot of bad hires. If they don't naturally ask diagnostic questions, they're not going to do it with your prospects either. So that's the question flip test. Number 2, the objection response test. Now you can do role plays in your interview, and I'd recommend that you do. But what I'd recommend you also do is do a real play, which is about 15 minutes in, I'll throw out a concern, such as, I'm worried you might be a little overqualified for this role, to be honest. Or, this role might not be the right fit for your experience level. I'm going to throw out a real objection to their candidacy and see what they do. B players will typically be flummoxed. They will get defensive. They will over-explain themselves, or they will become argumentative. Those are all big problems that you want to avoid. A players are going to stay calm. They're often going to thank you for being frank. Like, hey, I appreciate that you brought up that concern. They're going to ask clarifying questions first and then address your concerns directly. They're often going to flip it back with, oh, well, what would make someone ideal for the role? And what do you think I'm lacking? Next level A players will also explain and try to resolve your concern, then tie it down with a question like, okay, so after hearing that, do you still have concerns about my experience? And this tells me everything I need to know about how they're going to handle objections from prospects. So obviously I've listened to a lot of sales calls. Top performers just fundamentally react differently when it comes to objections. They don't get phased. And bottom performers or middle performers or BS artists, they might have a smooth sounding rebuttal, but they're not going to be direct with you about their rebuttal. It's going to be too smooth, too polished, too practiced. You're going to get different responses here than when you role play. When you role play, the mask comes up and they know that they're on trial and they're going to give you something very polished. When you actually hit them with a legitimate objection to them that's personal, you're going to get more of how they're actually going to interact and what they're actually made of. BS artists fundamentally are going to sound smooth and suave, and they're going to have the right answer for everything. But it's all going to be glib and surface level and superficial and glamorous and glitzy and shiny. The best people to hire for sales are often rough around the edges. They're not polished. They're not glamorous and glitzy. They might stutter. They might trip over their words. They might look up and struggle with word finding. That's authentic. That's going to come across really well on a sales call. Keep that in mind. Time for tell number 3. This is the infinite drill down. So this is your ironclad defense against BS on resumes, and it also uncovers BSers in verbal conversation. So you're going to pick a section of their resume, preferably one that's full of facts and figures and numbers and metrics and KPIs and accomplishments, and you're going to drill down. You're going to ask them, oh, how exactly did you accomplish that? Or what behaviors did you have to engage in to get there? Or what problems did you face and how did you solve them? Or, what specifically did you do that took you from a 12% conversion rate to a 27% conversion rate? You're going to use a scanning electron microscope on their claims. You're going to double click on every box that could be opened. You're going to drill down. This is the infinite drill down. And once they give you more details, you're going to drill down on that. And once they give you more details, you're going to drill even further down on that. So here's what best artists will do. They will be vague, impressionistic, lacking in detail in their answers. They will pass off solutions with just things like, and then it just clicked, as if someone waved a magic wand. They will admit that other people came in and solved the problem for them, which you want. Then you realize you don't have the A player that solved the problem. You have the BS artist or the B player that was riding the coattails of the A players. They will just not be able to describe the problem and obstacles in sufficient detail. And they will start repeating vague adages or statements like, oh, we just worked really hard. Or, sometimes you just got to be gritty about it and then things turn around, right? That's not actually answering the question. Whereas A players are going to be able to expand and explain at any level of micro detail. They can drill down to the ultimate smallest level of detail because they're the ones that actually solve the problem. They're going to share nuanced, detailed, or technical information that they got from solving the problem, and they're going to give precise information and share unique insights. They're also going to bring up tangential or related problems that do inevitably crop up. When you're solving one problem, it's usually tangled in a whole big ball of yarn with a bunch of other stuff you also have to tackle at the same time. And then they will also freely give credit where credit is due to other team members or people who were involved in helping them solve the particular problem. The problem is BS artists and B players typically try to take credit for the A players' work, and that's how they ride coattails up the organizational hierarchy. But because they're not really paying attention and they're not the ones solving the real problem, they're not able to speak in the depth and detail that the actual problem solver can. So that is what you're going to do. You're going to do the infinite drill down. And you need to be unafraid to actually ask the nuanced, detailed questions. You're not going to get very far if you pull back and you pull the punch here. You need to actually dig in. And if they say something like, yeah, we worked hard and we were innovative and we established some synergy and we just really worked well together and we solved it and we overcame it as a team because I'm a big team player. Does that make sense? You're going to have to say, no, actually, that doesn't really make sense. How exactly did you create synergy? Like, how did that look on a day-to-day basis, a minute-by-minute basis? You're going to have to deeply dive into it. You can't be shy about this. Okay, now let's talk about some bonus factors. These should lock in. If you had a good interview, they should lock in your positive impressions. If, number one, they ask you for objections at the end of the interview. This is objection handling focused, yet less than 5% of people do it. If they send you a follow-up email with a thank you, that's conscientiousness. Less than 10% of candidates do that. Deduct points from that second one if they try to flush objections via email. That shows lack of initiative or quick thinking. They should have done this in real time during the interview. If they leave it till after, they're a little bit lazy or somebody else told them to do it because they're getting advice from their friend. Okay, time for some real world results. I was consulting a B2B agency that was struggling with sales team consistency. Their close rates were all over the place. Some reps at 45%, some reps at 8%. Classic inconsistency. I took them through this exact hiring process for the next 3 sales hires. All 3 candidates that we hired used these tells, went on to become top performers within 90 days. But the real proof is in the pudding. 6 months later, the overall team close rate had risen from an average of 22% to 37.5%. Not because we changed the product, not because we changed the offer or the leads, but because we hired people who could actually sell and take feedback and implement it consistently. And it's not just me using this system. At this point, I've taught this to dozens of business owners, and they're consistently reporting the same result. Fewer bad hires, faster ramp times, and higher team performance. Remember that a single bad hire can cost you approximately 3 times their annual salary or the comp you have set aside for them when you factor in burned leads, reduced team morale, and opportunity cost. These 3 tells have probably saved me over $2 million in hiring decisions over the years. So now, if you're still here, let's talk about the bonus 2-week onboarding system that I promised at the top of the call. Here is what it is. It has 4 main components. First component, it's really helpful. And these 4 things together are the perfect balance of efficiency and effectiveness that I found in onboarding new sales reps. So first, they need a self-study onboarding. You need a course in a learning management system that they can work out at their own pace that combines videos, quizzes, and AI role plays covering the product, the industry, and the customer knowledge, okay? Product, industry, customer. Minimum or maximum of 40 hours of content. Not too much, not too little. Component 2, you need a daily group training. Live daily sessions of at least 2 hours led by a charismatic sales leader who can sell the product effectively. Do not have this led by a trainer. If all they know how to do is be a good trainer, they are not going to convey the sales material effectively. They're not going to really hype up your sales team. And these need to be live daily sessions with multiple people because you're going to create a group learning environment, which is much more powerful than one-on-one. Number 3, shadow training, a minimum of an hour daily where the new hires listen to live calls in real time alongside experienced reps. This is your side-by-sides or your shadowing time or your live listening, monitoring time. They're going to be a fly on the wall and listen to the live calls happening. That is the best way, one of the best ways that people are going to learn. And then graduated certification is the 4th component, a system where their first 5 to 10 pitches are monitored in real time, as close to real time as possible, and then evaluated thoroughly after each call. And they have to hit certain KPIs to reach the next level of lead assignment. So basically have to earn onto your team, earn their way onto the full sales floor. And it does need to be possible for them to fail out of the program even after you've invested all this time in training them. But with 40 hours, again, of content, self-study, you've actually minimized the amount of time to just the daily group training, which is the most intensive part for you, the business owner, or whoever your sales leader is. And then the shadow training is really a light footprint on your sales team. So that is a 4-port system that's virtually guaranteed to get them to a minimum of 25% close rate in their first 5 calls within under 80 hours of time invested. Now, we go into much more detail on this in the downloadable guide linked underneath this video. Go ahead and grab that if you want it. So try it out and then let me know in the comments if you have any problems or questions. Now, here's how to implement the TELL system. Really quick, you're going to need to build these 3 tests into your interview process. Don't skip them even if you have a good feeling about the candidate. Don't skip them for employee referrals. Stick to the process. Number 2, create a very simple scoring system. Give each TELL a score 1 to 5. Anyone who scores below a 12 total doesn't get hired. No exceptions. Number 3, train anyone else who's interviewing candidates and selecting them with you. The system only works if everyone uses it the same. So that means you have to calibrate constantly on what constitutes each level of scoring. And then finally, document your results. Track which hires came through the system versus your old way, and you'll see the difference within 90 days. The key is being disciplined about it. Like most things, systems need discipline. You can't go back to your gut feeling. Most people will go back to their gut feeling. Don't be most people. Look, if you're serious about building a sales team that actually performs consistently, you need to implement the system starting today. Just try it. It's going to be better than what you're doing today, your gut feeling, and if it sucks, you can discard it and go to the next YouTube guru's advice. I, for my part, have spent over 12 years and hired hundreds of salespeople to develop these insights. You can either learn it the hard way, like I did, or you can apply these 3 tells and start hiring A players immediately. Now, if you do want to go deeper on building a high-performance sales team, go ahead and click the second link in the description. That's going to take you to our website where there's a link for an application to see if we might be the right fit to work with you and your company to help you scale to whatever goal you have. Again, I work with a select number of companies each year using the system I used to grow Lending Club from 1 million to 81 million. The next step is simple. Go ahead and click that link in the description. And thank you for watching this video. I'll see you guys in the very next one.